Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I am the host of this podcast, and yes, we are bringing you another exciting episode with some amazing people. You guys know what it's all about. We are your number one podcast from bringing you conversations around death, dying, and grief, and all the messiness that comes in between. With some amazing people who not only walk the walk, but they talk the talk as well. And they are here making ripples in the world, changing people's lives, and helping them heal along their journey as well. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say that if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. But most importantly, if you know anyone who could benefit from the conversations that we have, please share this along with them. Help us reach them, help us give them support, but most of all, help them know that they're not out here in the world by themselves, right? And that they don't have to navigate this alone. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only, and this is a live stream. So if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. Now, people, help me welcome my next guest. I'm excited to have this conversation with her, Stephanie Ann. Stephanie, how you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Tony. How are you?
I am doing amazing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. This is wonderful. It's
Yeah,
fun.
we're about to have a lot of fun. We're about to have a lot of fun. So I'm excited. We talked for a good long time the first time that we talked. So I'm really excited to see where this conversation takes us today. You have such an amazing story. Now, before we get into your story, do me a favor. Introduce yourself. Tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
Hello, I am Stephanie Ann Webb. I am an encouragement and empowerment mentor, podcaster, author, and speaker. I think that's it. When you have all these things, you forget what you've done.
It's like a person who has like 20 different letters behind their name. They're like, I think that's an LSW.
Oh yeah, I never know. I never know what those things mean. I'm like, what? I don't have any behind my name, but
me neither. I just go, I'm a grief coach, mental health practitioner, suicide interventionist, author, podcaster. I think that's about it, but that's where we're going with. And maybe something else may come up later. I don't know.
I'm me. Labels are labels, right? I live in London, Ontario, Canada, and I think that's it. I don't know what else. How else do you describe me? I'm goofy.
So tell people, about the work that you do, right? And what does that entail? So that way the audience get a good idea of what that looks like.
Well, funnily enough, I literally just had a conversation with a friend about what our taglines are, or what really who we are, what we're niching down as, and we're constantly changing. The more that we grow, we adjust, right? So what I just love doing, I love encouraging people and helping them find out that they can empower themselves. And so I work as a mentor one-on-one with people to be able to help shift their mindset and help them to grow and challenge themselves a little bit more. I also am an author of a children's book called What Should Dragon Do? It's about teaching children about kindness and navigating, managing our emotions. And I just finished another book about a little chipmunk and his adventures. And I'm a podcaster. I have two podcasts. One is Steph Podcast, where I talk about personal growth, mental health, different things like that. And then I have Soothing Words with Steph, where I read stories and meditations and affirmations in a soothing voice.
I love that.
I like to do a variety of things, but I really connect through stories. I share a lot of stories because I'll get an idea, or I'll have something that happened, right? And I like to speak on those things, and then I'll relate it to something in life. So it helps. I feel like I connect things for people, right?
Right.
Ideas and the ways that we can grow with a story, because that's how we relate to so many things, is your stories.
It's very true. This is, and it helps others. Like you said, it's a great way for us to connect with each other on a much deeper human level, right? Because we all have stories. And speaking of stories, you have an amazing story yourself, right? About how you got into this work and things like that. Let's talk about your journey. Share your journey with the audience. Tell them, tell them how what it took for you to get to where you are today.
So I grew up conservative, biblical, fundamentalist, but I was fundamentalist light version. I wasn't like super fundamentalist. When we talk about labels, I actually did a podcast episode on this. Labels are helpful in understanding, making it simplified, but it can also be unhelpful when you're focusing on this one aspect of things. So when I explain like that's just how I can explain where the background I came from. So I grew up quite strict religiously. I grew up in the Christian bubble, I called it, where we all call it that. So in the Christian and church, I went to the Christian school until grade 8, and then I went to a secular high school, and then I went to Bible college, and then I went to normal college, and then I went to a Christian university. I've been to 3 post-secondary.
Wow.
I only graduated from one. So, but I was raised in a quite a strict, I think it was at First Baptist, and then we moved to different denominations, but in a background where I really didn't know any non-Christians until high school. And there was a lot of teaching the teaching that we got was a lot of shame, and everything we did was sin. And so now as an adult and learning more about personal growth, learning more about psychology and how we work, I understand like the things that I did as a kid, like for example, I love to watch TV because I connect through stories. And I was also using TV as an escape from reality, but I was always told I was sinning. I was always told like you don't love God enough because you'd rather watch TV than go to church. And as an adult, I found out I'm an introvert, so I didn't want to go to church because I didn't really always want to be out and with people. But once again, there was that shame of I must be bad. So I always thought I was bad. And that really affected me. I tried so hard to love God and read my Bible and pray. And I was like, God, please just fix me. I don't want to have anxiety. I had anxiety and depression until basically after like in my 40s, I really started to work through this, but I tried to pray it away. I asked God to fix me. And it wasn't until I learned like, oh, I have to do something. It is what I can start to change my life. I started also questioning the things that I was raised with. And I started learning different things. I started learning about critical thinking and different religions and how other people thought. It really opened up my world to be more open and to be more accepting and loving of other people.
So I love that because I think there's a lot of there's a lot of people out there that may be struggling with the notion of that, because what it sounds like a lot of times, and you and I have talked about this, and I'm not here to put down nobody or what they believe or what they don't believe or anything like that. Again, I struggle with the forms of manipulation that comes along with that. The forms of I got to shame you because you don't believe in the same things I believe in, or I have to judge you because you don't believe in the same things I believe in. Because most people that I know, right, they're like, and I know good and bad people in all walks of life. I know people who don't believe. I know people who do believe. I know people who are Catholic, Christian, Baptist, and on and on, Muslims, so forth and so forth. I would say for the most part, the people that I do meet, they're non-judgmental, and they are really amazing people. but as they say, it only takes one apple to spoil the bunch, right? I've met those people that are just like, oh, and they smile in your face and then go and talk behind your back. And I'm going, this isn't a good look for you. This is not a good, no, this is not a good look for you at all. Right. And so when you're thrown into um, the belly of the beast, so to speak, right? And you're surrounded other people that may or may not believe the same way that you do, but they give you a different perspective on how to look at life, right? Through said belief systems or non-belief systems, right? And you're looking at them going, whoa, you can do that? Right? It's a whole new world, as they say on the line. It's a whole new world, right? But what do you think? Because there's a lot of unexpressed grief through that said belief system, right? Share some of that with us.
Yeah, I have a book by Gloria Steinem that says the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. And I did not relate more to that than when I started challenging and questioning and deconstructing through the faith system I was raised in, because I saw what it actually had, how that had created the life that I was in. There was such a fear. We were told, and it's actually quite funny. I laugh because we were told to fear the world, which was anyone outside of our church and our bubble.
Mm-hmm.
But we were also told, do not fear. So if you had fear, they would just say, don't be afraid. The Bible says so. So they didn't. I know that, our parents in the church, I really do think they were doing the best they could, but they didn't understand that was very confusing.
Yeah.
And I was also raised, like my dad is very much 6-day creationist, and he's very intense about it. So I remember in high school, I had a history class, and I remember standing up to the teacher and saying, no, evolution's wrong. Creation is the truth. And, like I thought I was doing the right thing and what my dad wanted me to do. But now I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, that was embarrassing. I mean, I don't want to be embarrassed of that, because that was just what I was doing, right? That was all I knew at the time. But also there was just a lot of, the fear I lived in was a lot of, was because of the faith I had grown up in, as well as I actually had a fear of boys. So I would also grow up in something called purity culture, where there was very much, and also courtship. So not everyone in our church had this belief, but my family did, where you would date somebody for the purpose of marrying them. But it was very restrictive. Like, oh, here's one boy in your church. He likes you. You like him. We're going to date and we're going to get married. And while that works for some people, it was very like a black and white thinking, all or nothing. There was not a lot of nuance.
Right.
So it was like, oh, you can't date around. So you don't actually have that experience and understanding of, oh, maybe I like this person over here. I like aspects of being with them. Like you don't get that experience of actually being around other people as much.
Right.
So there were many people who married, and then years later they found out this was not a good marriage because they had been stuck in this idea of courtship.
Yep. Yep.
But I had a fear of men as well. And so I didn't date until my 30s, just because first of all, I didn't believe I was good enough, and I didn't think I was pretty enough. But also I had a hard time connecting with men, because I thought, because also being in a very patriarchal system, men were going to save me. It was like, we're going to get married so I can be a stay-at-home wife and mother, and you're going to save me. And there's nothing wrong with that either for the people that choose that. But that was not my path. And I'm actually grateful for that, because I wouldn't be who I am today if I had been stuck under thinking if I had gotten married in my 20s, it would have been to somebody who would have squashed me. And I've had to experience life for myself and bloom into who I am today. So when the talking about the grieving process, when I started to understand a lot of the teaching I had actually affected me, I was angry. And that's why I wanted to talk and come on your podcast, because there's that grieving process. There's that anger that pops up. And people don't always understand that anger is part of that process. And I would have people message me and said, Stephanie, why are you angry? You shouldn't be angry. We grew up in the same church. And all they did was talk at me. And I think for people, if they really want to understand, there could be a curiosity there. Like, oh, why are you angry? Tell me more. But I once again got a lot of judgment and shame, which made me just remember the stuff that came up from my past anyways, from the church. I was like, guys, we got to do better, because you're just heaping more shame and not understanding where people are coming from. So my anger was legitimate. And if people are angry around me, especially if they're coming out of religion, I completely understand where they are. It's not a bad thing. It's like they're struggling through something and they're understanding that maybe this affected them negatively in their life. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. We had a comment over here from Winsome Book. She's another great person if you ever get the chance to connect with her. She's very knowledgeable. She got a book. She teaches lessons, some really, really valuable lessons. But there's a comment up here: religious beliefs forced on kids can be so destructive. And listening to you, I'm going, yeah, that's, and I don't think people really actually understand that, because I'm a firm believer. Look, allow people to choose what they want to believe and what they don't want to believe, as long as it makes them a good person, right? Who are we to say that this is the way it's supposed to be, when history teaches us is that no one really knows, right? No one really knows. And so I think the biggest threat to a lot of things like that is that people are afraid of having free thinkers, people who can go, I don't agree with this, right? Because and you say it best, it causes a conflict of interest with individuals, just because a person is curious, and I constantly have to sit down and tell people, like, look, you have no right to judge this person. And I often get this, well, it says this in here. I go, yeah, but it also says it in there too.
Cherry picking.
It says the same thing, right? And so there's another one, and it's segue to what I was about to say. It's another form of abuse, and it shakes your faith in God and His plan for your life. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna let you dive into that comment right there, and I'll come back right behind you with some thoughts and everything else. But what do you think about that? I do believe that it can be a form of abuse, and it can shake your belief system, right? You know what I'm saying? And will actually not only add to the grief that you're feeling, but also a deep embedded wound of trauma, of religious trauma, right?
Yeah. I struggled with a lot of it. Like, we were told that now they wouldn't say this. I have to be careful with my wording. I believed I was worthless. And we were told that we're depraved sinners. And so even I would hear my mom, when somebody would say, oh, your mom's so sweet, she's such a good person. And I would tell her, she goes, it's not me, it's God in me, or Jesus in me. And even that language, it's like, I can't say I'm good. So I could never think, oh, I did this, I cannot be proud of this. It was always giving the glory to God. And I understand that concept, I do, but I think it takes away from our humanness, that
Right.
to know that I believe that I'm wonderful. And I've had to learn this language to learn how to love myself, because I did not. I was not given those tools. Now, there could be people who were raised the same way I was raised, and their parents did have those tools. But I think
Right.
a lot of them, and I've talked to many, there's a lot of us who didn't. We struggled so much with accepting ourselves and loving ourselves. And the controlling aspect, there's a fear in the evangelical community. They put out these Christian movies like God's Not Dead. And this is an actual thing they believe. I've heard it in my own family. They don't want you to go to a university that's not Christian, because if you take philosophy, the philosophy professor who's atheist is gonna challenge you and fail you if you stand up and say, I believe in God. That's a part of this movie. And people actually believe that this happens. And I'm like, this isn't happening out in the world. They're scared that you're going to go to a university. Now, I went to a Christian university because I also had this fear of going to a non-Christian university. And I took philosophy. And I'm so glad I did not. I was in my 30s, and my dad and his friend said, you should not take psychology. They didn't want me to take psychology, which I first went for. And then I switched to philosophy. And if I had listened to them, I wouldn't have taken it. But I didn't listen to them because I was like, I'm in my 30s. I can do what I want. But I switched to philosophy, and they didn't think I should. I was like, what are you afraid of? I'm at a Christian university. But I took critical thinking. And that was the hardest course I ever took, but the most wonderful course I ever took. And I said, this should be taught in high schools, my goodness. Because I started to think for myself, and I was in my 30s. I did not know I could think for myself. And that's a lot of how many of us were raised.
Right.
And not everybody. So I always want to make this like, it's not all or nothing, but there are many people, especially as we deconstruct, we talk to each other. We're like, they don't teach you to think for yourself. So they're afraid that you go out into the world, you're going to lose your faith. I'm like, if the faith is so, it must not be that great if you're worried about challenging it. If you're worried about the hard questions, we should be asking those.
Yes.
And we don't always have answers. Like I studied apologetics for a few years, and apologetics is like having an answer for the faith that is within you. So you study it so you can have answers if people ask you questions. And I was always like, I got a great answer for that person. And oh, look, I beat them at that, And it wasn't supposed to be about that. It was supposed to be about humility.
Right. But see what happens a lot of times, and we got another comment over here as well. One some book said, pertaining to what you was just talking about, they said it allowed you to form your own opinion about yourself and the world. And I think, and it's absolutely correct, right? Because you have to go out here. But I also want to touch on something as well, about courtship, right? About taking your time to get the chance. Look, I talk to a lot of people. I got a lot of friends from across the world. Some are very interesting. And some of the choices that they make. But I don't judge anyone. I just, I'm just there for them when they need me and things like that. And, I'm not the type of person to be like, I told you so, right? But I do give like little warnings to people like, maybe you should take your time to get to know this individual and things like that. And that goes for both men and women. And they go, well, Tony, I don't want to miss out on this, that, and another. I go, but yeah, but what if you find out that you don't like that person, right? And this is where, see, I'm an old school type of person as well. Now, it took me a long time to be old school, but it took me a time to revert back to the things that I already knew, right? Because like most people, I went out into the world, and let's just say the world wasn't prepared for me. Okay. And vice versa. In some ways, I wasn't prepared for the world. But, I tell people this all the time. Now that I'm older and I've matured and I've learned a lot of things, I go, I would rather go and court you and things like that because of the simple fact of two reasons, right? Two reasons. I may find that 6 months down the line that I don't even like you. But now I've eliminated something. I've eliminated the physical aspect of it, the physical intimacy of it, and in turn, I've developed a friendship with you. So therefore, if we decide that, hey, like it's not good that we get together like this, I still have you as a friend. So there's no loss, right? There's no loss. You got a good friend around this. But now moving, but I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on that, just kind of share my thoughts on it. I think it's beneficial when people can take when when people respect themselves, um, to that point. And again, these are just my thoughts, right? I would rather have the respect, than to lose that part of that makes me who I am, the very essence of who I am. But also to what you were saying before, about people not really understanding, right? You know what I'm saying? Being quick to judge and things like that. I struggle with that, right? Because of the simple fact of, I say, it tells you right here not to do this. So, you know what I'm saying? But then you turn around and do it, then that makes you a hypocrite. But then I get in trouble for calling them a hypocrite. What? I'm confused. I'm confused, Stephanie. Right?
Yes. But I just want to say for the courtship thing and the dating, like it was confusing. I think it was a backlash to people were dating and sleeping with each other. So then they started talking about like true love waits was a whole thing with like don't have sex until you're married. But when it becomes an all or nothing thing, or like you have to do it this way,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't work for everybody. So it's not understanding that we're all different and we all have different ways of how we meet people. Some people have great marriages through courtship, but because it was taught in this way of this is how it works, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work for everybody. But yes, the hypocrisy thing. And this is one thing. So I'm going to go back to a story here. I was in high school when South Park came out. Wasn't allowed to watch it because they made fun of Christians and Jesus and stuff. But in my 30s, because the show is still going, I
Yeah.
started watching it and I was laughing because, and I thought, oh, am I allowed to be laughing at this? Because it's kind of, what's the right word? It's
Funny.
they're just making fun of everything. And so, but I thought it was hilarious. And the reason I did was because I was seeing it as an outsider and seeing it as a mirror. And so that's what I think we have to observe. Okay, when they're making fun of us, why? There's a reason for it because we act like that. So I started recognizing South Park is telling us the truth. They're showing us who we are. And the whole thing with the hypocrisy, we in the church, they're given this language. We didn't say we were perfect, we're just forgiven. But what it does is nobody's saying you have to be perfect, but it's taking away from listening, from observing that there's something there. There's something to look at. If people are
Right.
calling you a hypocrite, it means it's taking a look at yourself. And as somebody who I used to say, I love people. I'm a good Christian. I was not. I was jealous and I had anger and I hated people. I didn't want to, but I did because I was not healing. I was stuck in a formulaic religion that told me this is what you do. And I didn't know how to heal. And I was trying. But when I stepped out of it, I started learning more about love. And as I started to learn to love myself, and I'm still working on that, I can also take away that judgment. I don't have to look at other people as the others
Mm-hmm.
because in how I was raised, we were anti people. We couldn't love this community because of who they loved. You know,
Right.
there was all this stuff, and I remember as a kid asking, "Can't we just love people?" And my dad would kind of say, "Oh, no, we need to tell them that they're going to hell." And it would bother me, but I was like, "Okay." So I find myself, and those of us who deconstruct out of the religion, we're kind of made fun of, or we're told that we're sinning. We're told that they want to leave because they want to go sin more. But what we've actually recognized is coming out of this formulaic religion, we're actually more free because I feel I believe in God still. I haven't left him, but I feel more free in just like I'm not stuck in this formula, in this box. I can love people easier because I don't have to judge them and say, "Oh, you're doing this and I disagree." Like I can love people. And it started allowing me to be more free. And does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And, I'm glad that you brought that up because it had me thinking about a lot of things, right? When it's associated with grief and trauma and the mental health aspects of it, right? And I'm seeing the three elements in that aspect. And I want to get your thoughts on it. That way people have a pretty good understanding that religious trauma can be damaging to a taught destructive mental health, right? What I'm saying, way of thinking or deconstruction of your mental health, right? And in an effort to manipulate your spiritual well-being. Um, and for some people, like let's throw addiction in there too, because for some people, it's a dopamine rush to criticize other people or try to force their set belief systems on other people in order to have an emotional reaction to it. So that can also be an addiction as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, it feels good to judge people, right? You're like, "Oh, they're doing this."
Yeah, yeah. So,
It
I'm thinking about all of that, and no wonder because it goes back to what you said earlier. You had to heal from a lot of these things, right? And I don't think people. I think majority of the people will look right past that and not even blink an eye of it because they're not thinking that can be very damaging to your very essence of who you are, which will cause a conflict, a self-inflicting conflict, right?
Yes, it causes anxiety. So
Yeah,
much of my anxiety, I had anxiety since like the age of 4, and I
right.
didn't really know. We didn't know about anxiety until like I was in my 30s. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression,
Hmm.
but I was constantly on edge. I was scared of everything, and I actually when I lived in Toronto for 10 years, and I was actually studied opera for about a year. And the piano p the I did but I didn't like people looking at me. I was like, "I'm gonna be on stage and singing," and I wasn't good with that. And I was so nervous about it, and the piano teacher or the piano player said, Are you a judgmental person?" And I was, like, taken aback by the question. I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he realized I was so critical of myself because I was so critical of other people.
Right.
And that was the first time I really recognized that because he challenged me on that. And I realized I grew up so critical. We judged everybody and everything. And as I started like awareness is the first step, right? Understanding that like, oh, now I can start working on my thoughts every time that pops up. And it still does. I'm like, nope, sending love to that person. I don't want to be judgy. I mean, it can pop up. We do it, right? But we can turn it around. And so that really was a huge aspect of my anxiety starting to heal from that and manage my anxiety. It was other
Right.
things as well, but that was a huge step. And so yeah, so the how we view ourselves and how we view other people, like we don't talk about this enough in mental health, you know?
They don't. They don't.
How we I know Simon Sinek has talked about there's so much self-help stuff. If all of this worked, we would all be cured by now because we're all reading self-help books.
Right.
But it goes out into the community. It goes out into reaching out to other people and loving them and serving other people in these ways. It's loving ourselves and then bringing that outward.
Mhm.
And that is a huge step in healing a lot of the stuff that we got going on. Like there's so many different aspects and everyone's different. We all got these things going on, but
Right.
yeah.
It leads me to this question. I just out of curiosity, right? Because I'm listening to all of that, and as you were talking about that, it reminded me of some people that I know now that are struggling with childhood trauma. And as you were speaking, I was going, how much of this is taught, right? And how detrimental it can be, because here's something that people don't think about. And as you were speaking, I was going, I wonder. So this would be a perfect time to ask such a difficult question. How many people struggle to the point to where they unalive themselves just due to conflict, right? How many of those are we looking past and just chalking it up to self-induced addiction, right? That leads to that, right? Or self-induced homelessness because of a conflict of interest. How much of this is associated with that?
Oh, I don't know.
Right, but
I probably a lot. I can tell you when I was struggling, I struggled for a long time.
mhm,
And I just thought, well, I'm saved because I prayed the prayer when I was 4, accepted Jesus in my heart. I'm going to heaven, right? But I just didn't want to be alive.
that's what I was talking about.
And when I lived in Toronto, I used to think this because I took a subway and I was like, what if somebody pushed me or I just fell into the tracks? Would it really matter? I'm, you know, death sounds better anyways. And I tell people this because I was a Christian, but I hated my life. And there's a lot of talk. I know people who are just waiting till they pass away to enjoy life. And I was like, no, it's here and now. Even the Bible says kingdom of heaven is here. And I'm thinking we don't have to live like we're depressed and we're all this in a religion that's keeping you stuck. It is here and now that we can be alive, that we are alive. And so I know people, some of them are waiting until they pass away to be happy. And that makes me really sad, but I get it because I thought the same thing. And I didn't know like how to get out of it. And now like I'm excited about life. I want to live because I've worked through this, because I'm finding healing. And I still get triggered. I still have family who very much say stuff that I just like, I want to start fighting with them. And like, and Wayne Dyer says the hardest person to love is your greatest teacher. And that for me is what the lessons I'm still learning.
Right.
Is how do I stay calm? How do I love people even when I disagree, even when I see what I think is harmful,
Mhm.
and allowing them because I'm where I'm at and they're where they're at. There's nothing I can do or say. I just continue to focus on what I'm doing. And if there's anything that flows out of that people will see, then great. But you can't force people. And that was also an aspect of my childhood. It was like forcing people. We have
Yeah.
to save you. We have to tell you,
Right.
and it's icky because nobody likes that.
Yeah. No one likes it because it's a forced thing, right? You know what I'm saying? And it can make people feel like they're being attacked on a different level, which will force people into situations to become very defensive. And then when said person becomes defensive, I think it's easier for people to play a victim than to take accountability for what they've done, right? And some people, oftentimes, I hate to say this, but oftentimes people will use religion as a way to justify their actions. And go, well, I was told that I can do this, and it's a sense of entitlement. And to be honest with you, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And again, I don't judge nobody for what they believe or what they don't believe. I have my own set of belief systems, and so I know there's going to be people out there that don't believe the same things I do. But it doesn't make you a bad person. I love everyone equally, right? But I mean, and the way I've always looked at it was, you're free to choose whatever you want. It's your life until it begins to affect you in a very negative way, which is the reason why I asked that question earlier. And so, and I love the fact that you broke it down the way that you did, and you've actually done some pretty amazing things with that knowledge and everything. What inspired you to write your book?
Oh, it was actually, I lived with roommates, and there would be situations that happened that I would tell other people and they'd think it was hilarious. So I just wrote it down. I thought, oh, maybe this would be a good children's book. And because it's about these little things that bother us and how we can get easily angered. Like there's a situation where the one roommate is watching TV and it's very loud. And the other one's trying to sleep, and they're like, "Can you turn the TV down a little bit?" And Dragon is the main character. She gets really angry. She's like, "No, I won't turn the TV down. This is my day off." And the book is called "What Should Dragon Do?" So it shares the situation, what happened, and then it says, "What should Dragon do?" She can turn down the TV a little bit. There can be compromise in that. She doesn't have to not watch TV, but if she can turn down the volume a little bit, then the other character can sleep. So anyways, it's just like teaching children about kindness and how we can be kind even when we're emotional.
Right.
So that popped up. And that's something like we all should learn, even adults. There's adults I should send this book to. But I
straight out of my head.
There was something you said I just wanted to go back to. It's like when we see people as an agenda, as a project, that's when it becomes harmful. Like you can have whatever religion you want, but when it becomes something that's I have to save you, or it has to be a project, people will feel that. That's what you were saying, right?
Yeah. For the simple fact of I see it too many times in the world, and sometimes it makes it hard for people to show up the way that they need to, in fear and you said it. So I'm just reiterating what you said earlier, for fear of upsetting other people, for what you may or may not believe, right? Because of conflict of interest. And I think a lot of that comes from mental abuse, turning children into people pleasers that become adults that are people pleasers.
Yes, people pleasing. Oh my goodness, I was such a big people pleaser.
Right. And so I think, in a lot of ways, and there's no easy way for me to say this, because it's going to sound exactly the way that it needs to say. So it's another form of grooming. Right? You know what I'm saying? It's a form of grooming. I need to groom you to fit into this world that I've created. Right? You know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm saying? No matter what you do, it's going to be my way or no way at all.
It's controlling.
And I learned that from a friend of mine, who was my friend Sean Wheeler, and he was sex trafficked from the time he was 3. So, and that's what, when you were saying that, that's what it reminded me of something like that, right? And I'm just going, that's just another form of grooming,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, to fit a narrative.
Mm. Yeah.
Rachel here giving me a hard time. She talking about my shirt is so white that is, it's so white. She's going over blind. Forget you, Rachel. Yeah, forget you over there talking smack. That's okay though. That's okay. At least it's white, right? At least it's white. At least it's not dirty. So I'm not too worried about that. But
It's
forget
very
you.
nice and white.
Yeah,
It's like clean.
Don't you y'all be tag teaming on me over here, like carrying on. I'm gonna have to start talking back to both of y'all. Give it up.
That's what makes it all fun.
Yeah, that's what makes it all fun. But but to be honest with you, that's what it almost feels like. It feels like a form of grooming to fit someone else's narrative, right? For the benefit of whatever their intentions are.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't want people to be different. And there is talk, like they would talk about the body of the church of the body is made up of all these different parts, the arms and the head and everything. But that's like the church people were different. But there's also not room to be too different. You're still within this mold. And you still have to be like, if you try to challenge things, I would have a cousin who would challenge, and she would, do other things. Who'd be like, oh, she's bad, but it's always a black sheep who actually challenge and change things and start dealing with and changing the generational trauma, right?
Yeah.
A lot of those things. So I used to see those things as bad, if you challenge, if you're rebellious. But man, those are the people that go out and they change things.
Mm-hmm.
They challenge. I mean, that's wonderful. And so I'm not super rebellious, but I get there at some points because I don't want to be stuck anymore. I don't want to be in this little mold, in this box that they've put us in. I want to be me. And there's so much complexities to us. And it's beautiful. Like we are beautiful people, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we can also just accept it and accept other people as who they are. Like it's wonderful if we see it that way.
Yeah, if you see it that way, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because what it did, it reminded me of, I dare not speak on anyone else. I will use myself as the example. So a lot of my life, I've been known as the lone wolf, constantly wandering around and things like that, but no one really understood why, right? And so for those out there who may be listening, if you wonder why I did it, it's because at a very early age, I realized a few things. One, we don't all look alike. Two, we don't all come from the same background. And three, you know what I'm saying? We don't, and not just three, you know what I'm saying? I got another one after that. Culturally, you know what I'm saying? We all experience things in a different way, right? You know what I'm saying? Or from a different perspective. And depending on culture, will depend on how we handle said things. I was always curious to see what was the similarities between the people, and I realized there was really not a whole lot. Four, I knew that there was people that spoke different languages. I always was the individual that was going, because this is what I saw a lot of times. Say, for instance, if you spoke Italian and you was around people that didn't speak Italian, what's the first thing that people do? They must be talking about me, right?
Yeah.
And go, right. Well, think about it, judgmental, right? You know what I'm saying? You must be talking about it because I can't understand what you're saying. And so in turn gave you a reason to try to hurt said individual. I'm sorry, that's just a trauma response. You didn't take the time to understand where that person was coming from. So these are four of the main reasons why I moved around the way that I did, because I never wanted to be the person to be mad at someone else for what I did not understand. You know what I'm saying? And the best way to do what you need to do, go out there and understand. That way, you know what I'm saying, you can not only experience the culture, right? You know what I'm saying, but you may learn a new language, right? You may find that they wasn't talking about you. Maybe they're experiencing life and from their own perspective, you know what I'm saying? And so, as being a human being, I think it's important to understand these things, you know what I'm saying, and to go in with an open mind, but be willing to learn from others, yeah, so you can prove who you are, to have a better human connection in the world.
Yeah, it's big. Like, I I have a friend who sometimes needs to remind me, be more curious.
Mhm.
Because sometimes I need that reset, you know? That's why
Yeah.
we help each other, we challenge each other. And it's fascinating actually. I have friends who will want to understand. They're like, "Tell us about how you grew up. Why do they think this? Why do they believe this?"
Right, right,
And
right.
it's because they don't get it, but they want to, and I think that's really cool, and I'm able to it's neat being able to see both sides of things or different sides,
Mhm.
because I can be like, "Well, this is why they believe what they believe." And a lot of it comes from order, people like the order of a certain tell me what to do. I need this kind of religion.
Mm.
And they don't
That
like chaos. But those of us who grew up in the order, we needed to find some chaos. We needed to get out of this box and find some chaos. And there's a Franciscan priest named Richard Rohr, and he explained it like that. He goes, we go from order to chaos to reorder. But we have to get some chaos out of that order to really find ourselves, to really live.
Mhm.
Um,
I think we talked about that before, right? It's a yin and a yang.
yeah.
You can't have one without the other. If you think that you're going to have one without the other, then you got another thing coming. But there's a balance, right? You know what I'm saying? Because once and people may have their own opinion of this, and you know what I'm saying. And this is just my thoughts, my opinion on this. The way that I've always seen it work, even now when I look into my life and I see the things that are transpiring and things like that, there's the chaos that tends to spill as chaos begins to thin itself out. It tends to spill itself over into order, right? Controlled chaos, and so when that is filled in, it kind of recycles itself again, right? You know what I'm saying? And each time bringing something for you to learn to help create that balance, right? You know what I'm saying? If that's what you're looking for. Um, but again, just my thoughts on that, right? You know what I'm saying? And people may have their own opinion about it. Hey, I whatever your opinion is or whatever your thoughts is, by all means, you know what I'm saying? If that's what works for you and and it makes you good and helps you learn and things like that, then I'm all for it. Again, I'm all for it. In my world, there's no right or wrong way to do things, right? You know what I'm saying? There's a right or wrong way to treat people, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's where I have my thought pattern is, and it's something that Dr. Martin Luther King had said in one of his speeches: "Judge not a man for his actions, but by his character," or "Judge not a man by the color of his skin, but by the character of his being." You know what I'm saying? Your character will speak volumes before your skin will.
Yeah.
So I pay attention to people. I'm very observant. I know how to stay away from people that aren't good for me, and I also know how to engage with people as a curious individual in the world as well, right? With the notion of I really have no intentions or ill intentions towards anyone. Um, until they put me in a position to where I have to. It's not a necessity. It's like, oh, you're gonna try to do this to me? Well, and I probably shouldn't be that way, but I am. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna get you. I really am gonna get you, right? But then I just get mischievous. I'm the type of person to walk up on you with a balloon filled with whipped cream and pop it over your head, right? And then I make you chase me because I think it's just going to be funny after that. So I
Oh
think
my.
that's a big bit of my mischievous though. So I would do something like that, like pow, and then you'd be like, oh my god, and
And
I
they're
mean,
recorded on TikTok?
Yeah, no, well, hopefully they don't, right? You know what I'm saying? But if they do, tag me in it because I'm going to laugh, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Don't just hold that one to yourself. I'm like, yep, I did that. But then there need to be see, Stephanie, this is where it gets really complicated for me, right? Because you may see a video of me with a black eye or something because I got caught. You know, yeah, exactly. This is like, well, that's a totally different, you know what I'm saying? I'm not really ready to talk about that one just yet, but it's a totally different checkmate. Um, but yeah, it's, but my mischievous is fun. Okay. My mischievous is fun. Like, I'll wait till you turn your head and steal your cake from you. Right. Just because, I won't even eat the whole thing. I'll eat I'll eat majority of it and then bring the rest back to you. Like I saved you some.
Yeah.
So, that's what I mean by that. You know what I'm saying? And things like that. But you started. Tell us, what made you start a podcast to do what you're doing?
Oh, well, so I was working at a bank for 14 years. And then I was tired of that. I had issues with my arms because I was at a call center. Anyways, I left there and I was starting to do voiceover because everyone talked about how nice my voice was.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to learn with regards to mics and audio and all of those different things. And I thought, okay, I need a schedule. But if I have a podcast, this was 2020 then, everyone was doing a podcast. And I thought, if I have a podcast, I'll have to learn it by a certain time because it's going to come out like bi-weekly or whatever. Thank you, Rachel. And so then I thought, okay, like I heard Simon Sinek do a podcast. I really like Simon Sinek. And I know a lot of different life coaches because I was part of the John Maxwell team where there's coaches and speakers being trained. And I thought, I'll just have conversations with people. It's very fun. I cannot do an anime impression. Sorry.
I think I will put that up there.
I was bad at the acting. I took some acting and improv, which was fun, but I'm not really that. I do more like, I'm good at the meditation stuff, like breathe. Stuff like that.
I do that. I do a lot of guided meditation. So, and I'll let you, but I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to add this in there too. So at the office that I'm at, every month we do what we call Wellness Wednesdays, right? And so my colleague and I, we take turns every month, and we do something different. Like, we've done artwork expression and artwork expression. We've done I've done self-defense classes. We do a lot of guided meditation, and the one thing that I've actually done, which I'm right there with you, is that I realized that I have a voice. And so with guided meditation, I realized that, using your voice in a very calming way can be very beneficial for people, and things like that. But you also have to be careful because your voice can be something dangerous as well, right? Personally, I've been on both sides of that spectrum. Don't want to do that anymore. But to what you were saying, okay,
that's how I started Steph Up podcast, where I was just having conversations with life coaches and then authors. And then season 2, I was starting to deconstruct, and just with everything happening, I was like questioning. So I got some religious stuff in there too, but a lot of it just personal growth. And then I started my second podcast last month called Soothing Words with Steph. Where because my friend Maria, she goes, I fall asleep listening to your podcast. I said, you're not supposed to fall asleep to those. So I said, well, I'll do Soothing Words with Steph, where I just read stories and affirmations and meditations and scriptures and whatever. And you can fall asleep to that. And then, I forgot. This past week, I released a third podcast with my friend Peter Carrington called Echoes of Understanding. So
Nice.
we just have discussions, male, female perspective, and just different topics like personal growth and all that fun stuff. I just love
Yeah.
personal growth and talking about just and the nuance and having hope and all of these things that we can bring to people. And
Right.
those are like my favorite things altogether.
Okay. I love that. I love that. And
And I
and
found out I can talk. Like I used to be really shy. Sorry. Part of also coming out of religion is finding my voice.
right, right.
So being able to like talk and speak and share my stories and just have an opinion, that is huge for me. One of my favorite affirmations was I have a voice and my voice matters. And that really started coming out as I started deconstructing from the religion I grew up with. Sorry to interrupt.
No, no, you're totally fine. You're totally fine. Like I said, this is your show today, and so yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective of it, because and when you said that, I was like, yeah, I can definitely relate to that, right? Because those people that know me now, they get this side of Tony that I can talk, right? But I really honestly have a short window, right? You know what I'm saying? Where I'm comfortable with doing that. Now, and this comes from for when I say this, it's going to sound crazy, but for probably almost 20 years out of my life, I never said a word to anyone. I never said a word to anyone. I would just look at you, right? And people go, "Where is going?" Because for one, I thought people were strange. Um, Two, I had trust issues, right? And so if I don't say anything, that will keep you talking, which in turn, you know what I'm saying? If you keep talking, you may say something that gives me an idea of who you are. I don't need to say anything. I just need to see what your intentions are. Since no one likes to be honest about their intentions, I just sit around them long enough to just make sure that I'm around when they reveal it, right? This keeps me safe. This has always kept me safe, whether it was men or women, you know what I'm saying? And things like that. That way I could make a choice. And if I didn't say anything, you could not use anything against me. You can't say, oh, Tony did, oh, Tony said that. No, I remember I didn't say anything. You assumed it, but those words never came out of my mouth. As a matter of fact, people was like, we don't even know what his voice sounds like. You're right. I don't want to talk to you. Like I want to just sit here and just be in my own little world. That way, I don't have to worry about you, and you don't have to worry about me. But again, I think that's part of trauma. Um, that's part of emotional and spiritual abuse, as well as mental abuse. Right? I find it. Once I learned how to articulate those things, it made it a lot easier to be able to navigate it as well. Um, and so it's part of the healing journey. But yeah, I wanted to put that out there because it was like, man, it took me a very long time to even find my voice. um and sometimes you would think, you know when you do start to speak about certain things, that this is your voice. But to be honest with you, your voice never really comes out until you start to live within your truth, right? When
Yes.
you become more convicted of the things that you say, you have a certain passion about you as you speak, right? And so then you begin to hear, and when you start speaking about it, you will hear yourself change. You know, if you would have met me 4 years ago, my voice don't sound the same as it did back then. It will poke itself out. You know what I'm saying? And you go, oh, and then people go, what was that? I go, I don't know. I don't know, right? But now I know who I am. I don't have to hide it from anyone, right? I'm a take it or leave it type of guy. Take it or leave it. I really don't care, right? Because for one, I'd rather you know than not know, right? Of course, there's some things about my life that I like to just keep to myself because those are mine. I can have some stuff to myself, right? I can be selfish with those things. At least that's what I tell people anyway. These are mine. I don't need to share this with you. Leave that alone. They're mine. Um,
I used
so,
to I used to explain everything. I used to just give so much information away. And people would say, "Why are you giving away your power?"
uh-huh.
Because
Mhm.
I felt the need to explain my whole existence.
Yeah.
And so keeping quiet is powerful.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And having that discernment, and that takes time to know when to say something and when not to. Because I would just like say stuff and I'm like, it's nobody's business.
It really isn't, right? And I get it. You know what I'm saying? But here's where the problem is. When you don't say something, people oftentimes think that you're holding secrets away from them. And they often and that's a trauma response that a lot of people don't really understand because they're like, they're like, well, you didn't tell me this, and would you not trust me or anything? Oh, look, I'm mischievous. You can't say nothing like that to me because I may be like, no, I don't. Right? And I may not mean to do that, but I will just to see, just because you put yourself in that situation. Maybe I shouldn't do that because people get mad at me like, wow, you really don't trust me. I was like, no, I didn't mean it that way. Remember when you said this and just naturally this came out and I didn't really think about what I was going to say when I said it. I think we're both surprised at this moment. So,
And it's fascinating how we perceive things,
right,
right?
right.
And the words that we use and how we perceive things based on our experiences and biases. A lot of times we're not it's so funny. The miscommunication among people, right? It's fascinating. And this is one thing that I get really excited about too is connecting with people, understanding each other, bridging things for people. And so when we're talking about people not understanding or they assume something about you, they're not really understanding because they're not curious.
Right.
But also when we use certain words, have you ever noticed if you're having a conversation with somebody and it just turns into an argument and then you realize actually you're saying the same thing, you're just using different words and you were misinterpreting each other?
I would say yes. Um, okay. I have two answers for that. Yes
Okay.
and no. All right. So when I was younger, yes. Until I started realizing it, but now I've gotten a little bit older and I don't argue. I will not argue. One, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. If I have to argue with you without having a civil conversation, then I don't want to talk with you. If I know that you've come into a conversation already emotionally charged, I would just walk away from you. Because for one, I got better things to do with my time. I'm really honest. I got better things to do with my time. Secondly, I'm not a very emotional type of individual. Now I do understand that I am very emotionally aware when things come about. But what I find that um, sometimes people come into conversations emotionally unaware. They're looking for attention, right? They're looking for some sort of emotional fulfillment, which, and as time and as life has taught me, it also comes with some underlying intention. And when you're wrapped up into the emotions, sometimes people don't know how to let that go, which can lead to other things, which, in my opinion, is a waste of my time.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm very mindful and very careful when it comes down to that and things like that. So I try not to engage in I try not to engage in those situations, right? And because I think healing for me should be something um, that starts within your core and not to be made a mockery of. And a lot of times that's where I find that people, when they do things like that and they emotionally charge, people sometimes forget the other side of it. They're not listening to you. They're listening to you to react instead of respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, those are my opinions again, you know what I'm saying? So I mean nothing by it when I say things like that, but to be honest with you, I do my best to try not to engage in such emotional interactions like that, so to speak.
Well, yeah, for sure. But it's just it is interesting, like with communication. Sometimes
Hmm.
we're using these words where we're not understanding each other
Right.
because we have different understandings of the words. And I did have a few years ago, I did have a conversation with one of my friends, and after a while, like we were kind of getting heated about it. And
Uh-huh.
she said, "I think we're actually in agreement. We're just saying the wordings that each other don't recognize." And then, anyways, that's like miscommunication, but also stepping back and recognizing that I'm triggered by something. There's emotions coming into play.
Another one.
Yeah. It's
That's
all
another.
fascinating. Like I love learning this stuff, and like practicing with people. Like
Mhm.
when I start getting upset about things, I recognize, okay, hmm, what's going on here?
Mhm. Because okay, now I'm glad that you said that because here's something that's another thing that people never really pay attention to, right? A lot of times when people are having a very aggressive emotional outburst, it's because they're having a triggered response, right? There's a trigger. Most of the times, look, and maybe this can help somebody take a step back and take a breath and understand and maybe even ask themselves this question: why did this upset me? This triggered something in me. So if it triggers something in you, there's an underlying truth that you have not addressed. That's not my problem.
Hmm.
That's something that you need to address. And maybe once you address those things, you can come back and we can have a more intellectual conversation, right? And because it's going to bring that awareness to you. So again, I'm glad that you brought that up. See how those conversations unfold, everything else. So somebody's probably listening to that and probably had something like that. Next time you get triggered, take a step back and ask yourself, why did you get triggered? If something that someone said to you got you to that point, that's a you problem. That's not a they problem, right?
Yeah.
And so out of respect for yourself and for that individual, learn how to just breathe a little bit. Take a step back, walk away, be quiet for a little bit. Ask yourself that question: why am I this way? And you may find that it's a little bit more deeper issue than what you're trying to let on, and that's okay, right? But deal with it.
Yeah.
Go in there and address it. Heal it.
Walking
You know,
away is so like you can say, I've seen these topic or these comments online where people are like, that's rude to walk away. It's like, no, you can say, I need a break. I need to step back and we can come back to this later. If it's like a couple who's fighting or something, but or maybe you don't even have to. You can just say, no, I'm not, like, if you get into political discussions, like me and my dad at times. I'm like, I'm not getting, he and I just disagree.
yeah,
I'm
I
not
say
getting into
no
this.
too. Like, no, nope, that's not I'm not even gonna go that route, right?
No.
Uh, and things like that. So I know, to be honest, Stephanie, I know how to stay in my lane. I know how to stay in my lane. I know not to cross over in certain lanes and this, that. I stay in my lane. I'm comfortable in my lane. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes I'm uncomfortable in my lane, but it's my lane. I don't have to justify nothing. In my lane, I am who I'm supposed to be, right? If a person chooses to come into my lane with me, understand that, hey, this is who I am. We're just going to walk you to your next destination before I have to go off and do my own thing again, right? So I have that understanding, right? I'm not coming over in Stephanie's lane because Stephanie may throw a shoe at me. I'm not trying to do that, right? Steph was like, did I tell you, Tony? And then, then I have to duck, and then there's a shoe laying on the ground, and they got to go get the shoe. I'm like, you all right? And, and it's just, I don't want to do all of that. Even Rachel, Rachel may be like, I'll just hit you with a shoe. I don't want to do all of that.
Rachel's going to hit you with a balloon filled with whipped cream.
Well, if you talk to my colleagues, they will tell you, right? I'm pretty sure, because I got 3 of my colleagues right now that are pregnant. And can you imagine how annoying I am because they're pregnant?
Yeah.
Come in, they're just looking like, why are you so mean to me? I'm like, no, I'm not mean. You're just being hormonal, right? And so, and I keep trying to tell them, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for the baby. Yeah, I'm doing it for the baby. I'm not even here for you, right? You just carrying the baby that I want to play with. That's all. So that's the reason why I'm doing it. I'm irritating you so you can hurry up and get and push the baby out. That's all. Right. Don't take it personal. I don't even like you that much. I want to play with the baby.
You better be careful. They might go to HR.
They ain't going to HR. See what I'm doing. What a lot of people don't understand. There's probably somebody laughing right now, but I have my own intentions. I'm getting them mad enough to where one of these days they're gonna duct tape me, right? They're all gonna beat me up, and then they're gonna have the babies come in there and help them out and things like that. And so I'm starting them off while they're early. That's all I'm doing, Stephanie. With that being said, I got 2 more questions for you, Stephanie. 2 more questions. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for this amazing conversation and the laughs and diving deep into a lot of the things that people don't think about and sharing your journey and your experience with us. Truly amazing. And for my first question before I let you go, how can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn and YouTube under Stephanie Ann Webb. And my website is stephanieannwebb.com.
Nice.
Yeah. There's with all the social media things, I'm like, wait, which ones am I on? Oh my word.
These things tend to happen. You did send me over the links, so her links are down below for everyone. Go and check it out. If you love these conversations, please go check it out. Tell her that Tony sent you. Go check out her books. Go check out her YouTube channel. Give her some support. Subscribe to it. Let's grow together. Let's keep doing this together. Secondly, I got one last question for you. I love this question. Huh?
I hope it's an easy question.
Oh, it all depends on how you look at it now. It all depends on how you look at it. Okay. Sometimes I get people off guard with this one, but if you've seen the show, you already know what I'm going to answer. I love this question, right? If you had a superpower, what would it be?
This is my own superpower. Do you remember, I don't know if you remember, in the 80s, there was this TV show called Out of This World.
Yes.
It was Evie or Evie, and her dad was an alien. So she stopped time with her fingers like this.
Yes.
And she frees people around her. And I always wanted to do that. If you're in the middle of something like class and you have to go to the bathroom, but you don't want to leave. I was like, can I just do this and freeze everybody and go to the bathroom? So that's what I would do.
I love that. I definitely love that. And one last thing, if you had any parting words for people out there today, what would you give them?
Oh, there's so many words that you could say. Oh, you know what? What we were talking about earlier. If we can be more curious, it will really help us be less judgmental. It can really start to help heal our communities, our relationships.
Yes.
So that, because we so easily get into these judgmental modes, or we just pounce on people. And it's like, if we can just take a step back, even if you disagree politically with stuff, like, let's be curious, because we're all one. We're all humans. Deep down, we're all the same. And so, a lot of things we do out of fear
I
Right.
love that. It's something that I've been exploring, especially in the three levels of consciousness: consciousness, unconsciousness, and and subconscious. Right? You know what I'm saying? And how they intertwine. And it's the saying, we're all the same, right? There's no difference between you and I. We're, I am you, you are me. We are in the same moment together, and we're they and they are us, right? And so when you can look at it in that time, in that framework, it makes it easier to appreciate moments with individuals because that's all you have. Time does not exist.
Mhm.
It's just what's happening now. And what's happening now is what's happening in so many different areas. So learning how to appreciate that, I think that's the key to it, right? With that being said, again, Rachel, thank you for this amazing conversation. For everyone who has been tuning in, I see you guys out there: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Rumble. All of you guys out there, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for the comments, Rachel, and for just being a part of this, for your constant support and everything else. With that being said, I got to run. I got another meeting I got to go to. So constantly running, constantly running.
Thank you, Tony. This is fun.
This has been fun. You know what I'm saying? And we definitely got to do this again. And with that being said, guys, we're going to close out this episode of Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. I love you. Thank you for your support. See you guys in the next one. Peace.